Slice the Podcast is brought to you by VegaLend, a different way to get a mortgage. VegaLend provides insight and advice so you can make informed decisions for the future of your family. Welcome to Slice, property made possible. We're a platform on a mission to reduce barriers to home ownership. This podcast is a safe space for our community to learn together and build the confidence required to start on their property journey. When you're ready to start, head along to slicetobuy.com and sign up for your free dashboard.
All right, so we're on to one of my personal favourites, looking at which property to buy.
I'm glad you're finally starting to enjoy yourself.
It's getting spicy now. I'm excited. I'm pumped. So there's a few things to consider, right, when you're looking at a property. So I guess which one we want to cover off. There's location, but also type of property that you're going to look to buy. So should we start off with the type of property, or the types of property, should I say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So there's.
I reckon I'm just going to let you run because I know this is a subject close to your heart. So yeah, tell us more.
Oh, you'll have to interject when I completely put my foot in my mouth. But the types of properties out there. So there's three main ones. You've got the townhouse, got Crosslease, and you've got Freehold. So townhouses are, the ones you'd see, they're kind of stacked next to each other, individual property, but their sort of overall worth, so to speak, is a little bit lower based on that build.
Yeah, just the proximity and space. Yeah.
That's it. And then the other one is cross-lease. So, for example, your average unit, that would be on a cross-lease. So, unit A with 7 other units, for example, and then you've got freehold, which is your traditional home, standalone, has its own sort of bit of land, if you're lucky, a sizable amount of land, in which case you've got a lot more to play around with, right? And the overall cost typically for that is traditionally higher, right? Because of what the degree of control you've got over the land as well. So,
and then you've also got sort of apartments. As well, yeah.
Apartments is an interesting one, right? One I'm also pretty passionate about.
Yeah, so we can probably drop into each type a little bit as well. I think something that's key to understand is there are actually a lot of cross leases across New Zealand and in Auckland in particular as well. So a lot of people, and the word itself seems more complex than some of the other kind of terminologies.
I remember when I first heard it, I was like, cross lease?
But effectively it's a type of legal title that means that the way the property is set up, there's an element or elements that are shared with your neighbours. So that could be, an easement down a driveway, which is like you both get, access to that driveway, and you both have you own a share of the land, but it's a proportion of the shared property. So you kind of, as a result, you might own 50% and someone else owns 50%, but you own 50% of the shared title. So that's what a cross lease is, and therefore you need to actually make or get sort of approval from your neighbours if you want to make any external changes to the structure. So that's kind of getting into a little bit of the detail around what that means. But in reality, a lot of people have cross leases, so they're actually a really common and still like an often purchased kind of property site, and you can actually convert properties as well that are cross lease. So
definitely.
The property that I bought with my partner is a cross lease, and it could cost between around 10 to 20k to convert cross-lease land, and then it can become freehold, which means you don't have to ask for your neighbour's consent.
It's a really good point.
So you can then build whatever you want on the site, and that's why freehold is considered so valuable. And then maybe do you want to drop into maybe talking a little bit about apartments and the other types?
Because usually that seems to be, I think, the more accessible option for a lot of us, particularly in Auckland, right? Like when you're looking particularly centrally, I'm talking about, the Herne Bay, the Ponsonbury, if you're able to, those seem a little bit more in reach compared to your freehold comparison in those areas as well. So with apartments though, there's just a bit more risk there, right? When you're looking at purchasing, you're taking on a lot of other factors when you purchase. It's things like body corp. So basically, that's like the entity that basically runs the mill of the entire apartment in terms of, you know, maintenance costs and all of those things. So you're kind of actually liable to pay whatever is required within the entire building. So that does include things like bills and things. So it can be a nice little one-stop shop arrangement. You know, you've got all your sort of utility costs and things all taken into account, and you've put money in that pool. But if, for example, there is an issue with the property in the apartment, say it's a leaky building, for example, you unfortunately are liable to pay whatever cost is attached to that as a tenant or occupier in that building.
And we will touch on some of the factors and things to look out for in our episode around building reports and quality buildings.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I think in terms of those different types, the last one to probably drop into a bit more detail is the townhouse. I guess we spoke about them being in close proximity. So I guess when you look at the different types, your apartments, your townhouse, your crosslease, your freehold, you want to be considering just, you know, what the quality of the building is, regardless of the type, and that's always going to be a big factor. So we will be dropping in on that shortly.
Yeah.
But also you want to consider what type might be right for your circumstances, what you can afford.
Absolutely.
But also where possible, what is going to provide you the most value. And I know that historically, land size and, you know, and talking about the different types and the space and the value of the land, that has always been one of the, you know, biggest things that's been spoken about.
Huge.
I gather from research though that it's generally kind of anything that's 100 square meters or bigger tends to be, you know, of a certain size that value is realized, and it doesn't necessarily matter if it's always bigger, but there are things to consider, like how does that space feel? Because the other thing is you've got to think about resale. Like, is it a decent size? Like, can you work from home in this day and age if that's a requirement? That will actually ultimately impact, you know, others' willingness to purchase the property.
Like is it close to public transport?
Yeah.
What are your neighbours like?
Yeah.
Are they crazy and out the gate? Like, probably not.
Yeah, well, that's where it comes into that worst house in the best street. You know, it's that location. And it is actually, a lot of that comes around to the neighbours around you, and I hate to say it, but gentrification as well. There is an element where...
I don't love that word, but it is...
It's not a positive thing, but if you're owning property, it kind of is a positive thing, because the more kind of... investment there is in a neighbourhood, the more people uplift the value of the houses around your property, the more your property's value will lift in turn. So there's lots of factors that need to kind of be considered around that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in terms of land size, when we're considering, 100 square metres, and obviously if it's freehold, you've got a lot more freedom of what you can do and what others can do, which can uplift the value of that house. That's why freehold is renowned as, the golden egg. If that's
gold standard.
If that's a saying you're
No,
comfortable with.
it is,
I don't know,
right?
I just made that up, but it sounds like I'm really meant to be on the podcast.
Yeah. If you can't tell, we're pushing for freehold here. We're really saying, if you can, go for it. If you can. It can be a luxury, but it's your best sort of shot.
Also, if it means going in with someone else to get freehold, like, it does tend to perform well over the long term, because you can do more with it to uplift the value without consent. You normally have a bit more space though as well, and a lot of those other factors. Another really interesting thing to look out for when you're talking about land size and types of property that you're buying is if it is subdividable. And I wouldn't have kind of talked about this as much historically, but my understanding of what's happening in market at the moment is that there are less developers out there, and less kind of investors buying, third, fourth segments of property.
Yeah, now especially.
Yeah, so actually if there is property out there that's sort of, about 1,200 square metres, and you're able to pick that up for a good price, you could look to subdivide, and obviously make quite a good return on that by selling off the subdivided land for another property. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Like the land size does matter. It's not the only thing or factor though, and the same thing with the type of property.
Yeah.
The other probably thing that's worth touching on is kind of location. So this is a tricky one because
Especially in
one
Auckland.
wants to live in the best possible place, but one cannot always afford to do so.
Yeah, which one do you value more though is like ultimately
and
the
also
argument.
like what's your way of living, and I think the
Yes.
last topic we'll look into is around maybe thinking about your goals, because that's always what all of this comes back to, I think. But yeah, location, you can be really smart about picking places that have really good rental yield. So, and that sort of means that even if you're living there or you're not living in there, you can get others to support with paying that mortgage. So a good investment is one that's, either breaking even or is paying you out some money. And if you're living in that home as well, and then you have other people supporting with the mortgage, you can actually just get border income and you don't have to pay tax on that to a certain amount. Right. So you can actually make that investment a really good one if you're able to get people in and supporting with that.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about kind of location, where do other people want to live as well? Like if you go and buy somewhere out in the Wops, it's such a, where did that word come from? I don't know, but if you buy in the Wops,
it's true.
Maybe no one else wants
30,
to live
40
there.
minutes out of Auckland.
Yeah.
It's not the Wops, but it's,
Yeah, but then
the
maybe other people don't want to live there. But equally, if you do buy further out and you're right by the train station, then maybe you're finding people do. But you have to take, all of these factors are worth considering, because whilst it might cost slightly more to buy somewhere more central, it might be that you're able to get people in renting with you. Although it might be that if you want to live alone and at home by yourself, you're better to buy a house that's further out that you can afford to service and make repayments on yourself. So again, it really comes back to what's important for you, what's achievable for you as well.
Yeah. And that's something even I took on when I was getting my property. Yes, I wanted to get a property that was super central and close to all my friends and my family and things, but I sort of compromised because I knew the value of a freehold compared to getting, say, a unit. So I did move out slightly, still relatively central in Mount Wellington I ended up purchasing, but I just knew.
Yeah, that's actually very central.
It's very central. I mean, there's a lot of cases even more central than that, but I knew that, with the freehold piece, at least I could do, more alterations. If over time you wanted to do, like you said before, subdividing, which is such a huge thing that, I wish I knew more about, but I'm learning more now.
I don't know that was as much of an opportunity probably when you would have been looking, but now just because of the way the market is, it is something
maybe in the future.
Yeah, it's just something worth looking out for, I think, now. And I mean, for me, I was looking at, the North Shore or where I could get in Auckland, and I was just flat priced out. I couldn't get anything decent. Although I didn't want an apartment either, so it does come back to that thing around where you see the value being, and if it is in the land and you believe that, and it's in kind of having some space and that kind of Kiwi dream, then freehold or cross lease is normally your best bet. Yeah. But it depends again on what you can afford. But you have to make that decision. So you either buy further out and you buy freehold, and I bought in Raglan and bought freehold. Yeah. But the money that, to buy an apartment, I would have spent less than I would have spent on an apartment in Auckland. Yeah. But I made that conscious decision because I wanted something that was going to kind of improve in value, or I felt would improve in value. And I think an interesting thing around that is location doesn't always have to be where you are. You can look at it from, various angles. And this was pre-COVID when I purchased as well. Mm-hmm. And so I purchased that property. Wait, was it pre-COVID?
The Raglan property, you mean?
I'm so confused about when COVID occurred. It's just this.
I think you did purchase.
It's just blip in my life, and now I've lost a good
Even
few
I'm
years.
pretty sure it was before. The big vid.
Yeah, whatever. It happened at some point, and COVID is this annoying thing that has happened in our lives too.
Cloud.
But there's dark cloud. Yeah. But anyway, we digress. I bought in Raglan, and I actually feel that I was looking at it from, in the end, a really investment-focused way. So I went to Raglan and I loved it. I was like, this is such a vibe. This is like, this is a different space in New Zealand. It's like other cool places in the world that people love and want to visit. And if I'm honest, there were so many Americans coming to visit Raglan that I was like, if America likes it, like there's always going to be interest in this location or this space. We also have one of the like best surf spots in the world on the west coast there. So there were little factors that I felt meant that it was a really solid investment, and so far so good. Like I think I'm at maybe 250k equity or something like that. So
wow.
it has proven out, and so that just goes to show you don't have to buy where you are as well. Like my Auckland property isn't performing as well. The market's different right now, of course, but actually just considering where can you buy, and you can either live in there for a period of time, or you can rent it out, and it just depends on your circumstances. But location doesn't have to be where you're at. I think that's probably something that I'd like people to take away from this session.
No, that's a good point. So I'm going to come left field. I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. Where are we going? So just going back to aligning with your goals, what would you recommend in terms of prioritization? What would you prioritize, 1, 2, and 3, so to speak, in terms of which properties you should buy, like the factors at play?
You just want to nail me to the ground on this one.
I do. I want to hold you to account. I'm going to come back in years to come.
It's an easy answer, and I know that we have to acknowledge that people have different circumstances, but let's say you can make it work by going in with other people and therefore purchasing freehold. I would always recommend freehold first. We're going to whack disclaimers at the end of this episode. Insert here. But I think ultimately freehold tends to hold its value really well, and you can uplift its value really well. I am actually not mad about Crosslease though. Like I feel that you could also get a good deal by buying Crosslease and then converting to freehold, because you can uplift your value, like the value of the property by 10%, say by paying 10 grand. You just need to find that money. So Crosslease, I don't have an issue with it at all. It's very common. And then, I think apartments and townhouses come next, and they depend on what you're wanting. Look, if you want to live in the property and live central, and that's your value and that's your goal that you're chasing, then yes, do that. But if it is from a property investment perspective, and I think this is where this whole podcast kind of like, those two themes will be crossing over all the time, but if it's a straight investment and you're trying to make money and remove the emotion from it, actually, 2 schools of thought here really quickly, but then from increasing the value of the equity, I would say freehold, like taking it from, you put 50 grand in and then you're up with 250, which is the case for me in Raglan, then I think that's a great option. But maybe you actually want it to be a rental property that's paying for itself. So my rent on that is not necessarily as strong as other areas, but I knew that I was going for capital gains. So are you doing that, or are you wanting to live in the property and wanting to live centrally and move your rent across to that property? Therefore, if you want an apartment or a townhouse that is central and that's what's right for you. And then finally, what if you're actually wanting rental income and you're not wanting to live in there? Then that's another strategy again, which suggests that maybe you do want it to be central, whether that's a house where you bought deed, which I think has probably got quite good rental yield, or whether it's an apartment or a property closer to the city or closer to transport, then that's a valid strategy as well. So my preference based on my strategy was freehold, but it depends on what outcome you're trying to achieve.
Awesome. No, gosh, I'm glad that you committed to those 3. I'm going to hold you to account still on those ones.
You always do.
I'll come. I'll be right
what
back.
What about you, Dee?
I think we already know the answers to this one. But freehold first. Townhouse. Oh, so Crosslease second. Absolutely. I would say Crosslease is super close to freehold. If you can do it. And then third, apartment. But if you can avoid it, I probably would at this point. But those are. I'm going to stick to those.
So we can probably wrap that up
Yeah.
And our next episode, we are talking about the documents when you are looking at one of these properties.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into
This
some
is
of
your
the
terrain now.
legal detail in our next episode. Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining our community. Buying property isn't easy, but listening in will get you one step closer on your journey. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve your experience. Join our Facebook group, A Safe Space to Learn Together, or follow us on Instagram at Slice2Buy. If you have any questions or topics you would like us to touch on, you can email us at hello@slice2buy.com. A quick reminder, Slice the podcast does not provide personalised investment advice. We are not acting as financial advisors or taking into account your circumstances. To get personalised advice, join us at slice2buy.com and engage with our partners who can act as your financial advisor or lawyer and support you with your specific needs.